it would seem that if anybody had justification for an exemption from a mandate, it would have to be you. You are sensitive at the level that it will produce an anaphylactic reaction to a component of 2 of the vaccines. You are sensitive to a wide number of things, making any injection a risk. And the 3rd vaccine to which you have access has a component to which you might be cross-reactive. So fair to say that it would clearly put your life in jeopardy to take one of these vaccines?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
So what happened when you went to the doctor and said, I can't take these, I need an exemption?
Yeah, so given that our mandates were coming in and every occupation being on the mandate list, I was like, well, if I don't have my exemption, I legally can't work in the state of Victoria. Now that's also gone across nationwide, so there's not any state I would be able to over the next few months, given the mandates.
And again, so you are a caterer working out of a catering vehicle. So
yeah,
this is not a situation where you're tending to patients indoors in enclosed spaces. You're working pretty close to outdoors with respect to your interface with anybody else. And yet you can't work without proof of vaccination.
No, I can't, even if I'm in the space by myself, and even if it's a door down operation and I'm just literally even doing click and collect or contactless delivery, I'm still not legally allowed to work in my home state.
All right. And I interrupted. You were going to tell me what happened when you went to your doctor to ask for the exemption that you were obviously due.
Yep. So I went to my GP, who knows my history. I have quite an extensive history. So my file is quite a big one if, say, I were to take to a new specialist or a new doctor. So I went to her just thinking it'll be an easy process. It's stipulated on multiple government websites that if you've got a contraindication and a polyethylene, specifically a polyethylene glycol excipient allergy and the high possibility of polysorbate 80 cross-reactivity, you can be granted a permanent exemption to the COVID vaccinations. So given that this was stipulated on multiple websites in Australia, the Victorian Specialist Immunisation Services, the Melbourne Vaccination Education Centre's website, I know even globally it's been mentioned on the CDC website and numerous ones as well. It's also stipulated on the Australian Immunisation Register, the form, which is the form that the doctors fill out that gets sent to our Medicare to be able to be granted this permanent exemption. So I went to my doctor asking her to fill out this form. It's called the IMO 11 form. She returned to me with saying, I can't give you the exemption due to legal liability.
Wow. That's incredible. All right. So I still can't quite wrap my mind around any system that has so little discretion in it that someone whose story is as clear as yours and for whom the jeopardy is as severe as the jeopardy that you face can't get an exemption. Yeah. Presumably, you didn't take no for an answer. No. What else has happened?
Well, since that, I was quite perplexed by that. It didn't seem to make any sense that she said that she couldn't grant me an exemption due to legal liability. It's also stipulated on all these websites, the people that can administer an exemption are general practitioners, clinical immunologists, obstetricians, gynecologists, pediatricians. So it was like, well, clear as day to me. I've got the contraindication. You're my general practitioner. You know this. You're my treating doctor. why can't you submit this form? And she just kept saying that, no, I can't. There's too many legalities around it. And then she also said to me, the only people that can were a clinical immunologist. So from there, I asked for a referral to my previous clinical immunologist, which was through a public healthcare system at a public hospital. These were the people who actually diagnosed me 6 years ago with the polyethylene glycol allergy. I got back a letter from the hospital saying that the wait would be 12 to 24 months before I could see a clinical immunologist.
Wow. So, I must say, I obviously knew your story before we started talking. Each time I hear it, I find myself newly shocked and enraged. I mean, we have two amazing facts already on the table. One, the idea that legal liability actually causes someone not to want to give you the exemption, which is, of course, the exact inverse of what you would expect, right? The fact that your life will be placed in jeopardy by taking such a vaccination. If there's any place where there should be legal liability, it would be that. A practitioner that failed to give you the exemption is putting your life in jeopardy. And yet, there is some other kind of jeopardy that frightens this practitioner even more. And then, as you go to the authority that you're told is the only authority who can grant the exemption, you're told it will take 12 months, did you say?
12 to 24 months, yeah.
A year to 2 years, during which time you will not be able to work.
Wouldn't be able to work and participate in like many facets of society as well.
So you would basically lose fundamental rights, including the right to earn a living, because you can't get an exemption that, frankly, anyone should understand is absolutely justified. This is, it's tragic, and it's also, in some sense, a measure of just how dysfunctional the West has become. I know Australia is, in some sense, ahead of the curve with respect to authoritarian measures with response to COVID. But this is just, it's a stunning rejection of the idea of a functional system. It's the inverse of a functional system. All right. So you were told you would take 12 to 24 months to get the exemption that would then allow you to return to work. What happened next?
So I went back to my doctor and told her this is the correspondence I received from the hospital. It was in written letter form. Earlier to this, I also have a private pain specialist. He is who I see for about my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and other conditions. He had noted, he was the first one to actually note that there might be mast cell activation issues, and that he would recommend me to see a private clinical immunologist. So I asked my doctor if she could refer me to him, thinking possibly the wait could be a lot shorter. I just thought, given that my history had been with this other hospital, it was probably best to go see them. However, I'm happy to go private. Right,
because the other hospital, because they diagnosed the condition in the first place before COVID existed, they obviously know that you couldn't possibly be making this up. Yeah. Right? I mean, no one has better evidence of that than that hospital. And yet they couldn't see the necessity of getting you an exemption. I mean, frankly, a piece of paper that just simply stops this train in motion. It's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. So I requested to see a private specialist who I've never seen before, which I found out that the wait to see them would be 11 months. Yeah.
I have to ask you this, Betty.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that you're just being too nice when people tell you these incredible things? Are you saying to them, are you looking them in the eye and are you saying, I am a human being. I am entitled not to have my livelihood destroyed and my life put in jeopardy. And you're telling me I have to wait a year or more in order to even see the specialist who can write the exemption? Can you please help me? Have you said something like that?
With I guess my main point of call has been my general practitioner. And to hear her say that she couldn't grant me an exemption was quite shocking. Then to find out these wait times, I thought, no, I just need to go back to her and I need to reiterate how important this is. So I did once I found out about this wait, and I thought, I'm going to do this again. And I don't care that she said no the first time, I'm going to ask. Possibly I have been quite nice and not maybe as assertive previously. I guess prior to this, I didn't think there would be any issue of me gaining an exemption. It just seemed very clear cut that I was going to be the perfect candidate to gain an exemption given my history and what has been stipulated everywhere on the government websites and the health websites. I just thought, oh, this is easy for people like me, especially given that it's been noted that a polyethylene glycol excipient allergy is a very rare case. Not to mention across all of our media platforms, our mainstream media platforms, the constant message being said is not everyone can get vaccinated. And essentially people like myself, so the ones who can't get vaccinated, are being used in this way, call it propaganda if you will, but they are literally saying, get vaccinated for those who can't.
Yes, this is also my thought, is it would seem the propaganda here too says, look, not everybody is lucky enough to be able to accept this vaccine. Not everyone can take it. It is the obligation of those who can to do it for the vulnerable who can't. Yep. Now, if the system is not giving you an exemption, if it doesn't understand you as somebody in need of protection, presumably from both COVID and the vaccines, then who is this for? Who are we protecting if not you?
Exactly. And that's why all this exemption process just seemed to make no sense to me, because it just felt like, well, what is the good of the exemptions if they're not granting them for people like me, or it is near impossible to be granted this? So I returned to my doctor and requested again. I said, look, the mandates are coming in. That was that week. I said, the mandates are coming in this week. I cannot legally earn a living. I was also told that I may not be able to see my psychologist in person due to this. So I'm also being denied access to other health industries. There are some doctors that are refusing to see patients, especially face-to-face. They're doing telehealth, but face-to-face if they're not vaccinated.
You're being denied access to important aspects of civilization, including healthcare, yes, by virtue of the fact that you can't get an exemption to which you are obviously entitled. And I must say, in my own defense, I did not mean to suggest that there's any part of me that thinks any of the responsibility here is on you. Even if you're being too nice, it is the obligation of other human beings to understand what has to take place here in order for the right outcome to occur. These are people who have the power to write an exemption.
Yes.
And somehow are not providing it to you, though we're literally talking about an issue of your ability not only to earn a living, but to survive.
Yeah. Exactly.
It is a stunning failure of these people's obligation to a fellow human being. It boggles the mind.